Well, hi y'all. I know I'm early. I'm like 3 minutes early. But you know what? I'm tired. Oh, music. It's doing the webcam. That's not the one I want. I'm so tired, y'all. 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 But I didn't want to put this off. I put it off Saturday and Sunday, and Monday I couldn't do it again. I had to do it, so today we're going to fake it till we make it. And honestly, I don't have to do that much work. I just had to set up the stream, and let's get going. So I think the best thing we can do is really just let's get going. What I like to do at the start of these videos is always to kind of do a quick recap. And for those of you who are watching this like on a playlist, sorry that you have to hear this every half hour, but for people who haven't heard it for a week, it's kind of important. So we're looking at the evolutionary origins of patriarchy by Barbara Smuts from 1994, I think. And she has a thesis that she wants to share. We've made it through, I would say about a third of the article to this point, and the rest we're going to try to get through the first hypothesis today, because I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to make it much more than that, but we'll make progress, and that's the important thing. So first of all, I need to make sure that this is in the it's coming out of my headphones. All right, so let's go over the sort of high points, the italicized bits that she has at the beginning of each of her sections.
Natural selection favors behaviors that promote individual reproductive success. However, evolutionary theory does not imply genetic determinism.
So, in other words, just because nature has set some successful strategies in motion doesn't mean that it's set in stone. We have choices in this process. Okay, the next point of her thesis.
Female and male mammals have different reproductive interests, and these interests often conflict. Males sometimes employ coercion to resolve conflicts in their favor.
Okay, so that is another premise. And by the way, hi Flint, good to see you. Thank you for stopping by. That is another premise that she's using to build her arguments about male coercion and their use of it in order to get what they want. But then females have their own strategies.
Female primates have several means of resisting and thwarting male coercion. Thus, in many primate societies, male control over female sexuality is limited, and in some primates, females seem to be entirely free of male sexual control.
Okay, so zipping along here, I think we're now basically to the hypotheses bit. So she's going to set this up, and then we're going to look at the hypothesis number 1.
Many human societies appear...
It's not really hypothesis. I already went over this last week. We'll call it speculation, or informed speculation, or an interesting idea that should be investigated. 1.
Many human societies appear to involve greater male control over female sexuality than is typical of most non-human primates, and in contrast to males in most non-human primate societies, human males tend to control both resources and political power. Why?
All right, so now we get down to hypothesis 1. Not hypothesis, but again.
Hypothesis 1. Among ancestral hominids, female ability to resist male aggression was compromised by reduced social support from kin and female allies. According to ethnographic surveys, the majority of traditional human
Let me just pause it so we don't read the title of the journal again.
societies show patrilocal residence, which means that modem humans show the typical great ape pattern of female dispersal away from kin, although there are important exceptions.
So again, what I think is important, if you don't remember from earlier in the article, is that the primate societies that had the most male coercion and the least ability for females to resist was this same one, the great ape pattern. And there was all the way to basically females in the troop being essentially having no male control over them. And yet human beings chose the most restrictive, human societies are reflecting the most extreme form of male coercion and limiting female resistance. And that's not a given, like, that's a choice because we have consciousness, is her point, I think, eventually. Yeah.
Societies show patrilocal residence, which means that modem humans show the typical great ape pattern of female dispersal away from kin, although there are important exceptions. This pattern of female dispersal is particularly significant when it is remembered that the opposite pattern holds in many other primates and mammals in general. In addition, among humans, as in chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutans, female-female coalitions are relatively weak compared with those formed in many female-bonded primates.
Again, reduced female resistance or opportunities for that, for collective action.
This tends to be the case even when women do not disperse from their natal groups. The reasons for great ape females' dispersal from kin and the rarity of female-female coalitions, with the exception of bonobos, apparently relate to ecological factors. Why women often disperse away from kin and why they rarely form effective coalitions against men remain unknown. Whatever the ultimate, evolutionary, reasons for these characteristics, what is significant for our purposes is that, both in other primates and in our own species, female dispersal away from kin and weak female-female coalitions tend to reduce women's ability to resist male aggression.
Okay, I'm just gonna bring in, I guess I can do more than one hypothesis because we've only been going for like 5 minutes. Seems a little short for an episode, so we'll go into hypothesis 2. But I think that a lot of anthropologists, my audio looks to be clipping a bit, so I'm just going to pull it back on that, is the emergence of like notions of property. And I don't know, we don't have records for whether or not or to what extent this is tied to a move from gathering or from gathering societies, from foraging societies. And it began with the idea of agriculture and having a fixed plot of land and putting your labor into it and then sort of assuming that it's yours. But I think that would be that line of thought, the idea of property, might be the concept of property, the socially constructed concept of property being put on land, on produce, on animals, and on women and children, that could be an explanation. I mean, we don't have evidence. Okay, thanks for the audio check. But that seems to me to map onto the kind of course of human... By the time we actually see laws being written down, which means that they were in practice or they were norms for much longer, that is what it tends to reflect. So,
Hypothesis 2. Over the course of human evolution, male-male alliances became increasingly well-developed. These alliances were often directed against females, and they increased male power over females.
Again, I think property here could do some real heavy lifting. The idea of passing on property, joining together to protect your property within a kin group. Yeah, I think Marx and Engels would have a field day.
Several people have recently argued that during human social evolution, male reproductive strategies came to rely increasingly upon alliances with other males. This idea derives from 2 observations. First, among our close relative, the chimpanzee, male-male alliances are more elaborate than in any other non-human primate. Second, in the majority of modern human societies, male-male alliances are of central political significance. The chimpanzee pattern of male alliances shows some striking similarities to what goes on in many human societies. In chimpanzees, males always remain in their natal communities and thus grow up among male relatives. As adults, males form long-term alliances with one another, and they use these alliances to compete for status and privileges within the group. In the wild and in large captive groups, observers have witnessed several prolonged power struggles among group males over the alpha position. These power struggles always involve complex and shifting alliances that bear striking resemblance to human political maneuvering. IN 14 Human Nature, Volume...
Again, I'm just saying, like, we had so many daddy issues we brought with us when we started to stand upright and use our thumbs.
Nearly every case, the male who won and maintained alpha status did so with the aid of alliances with other males.
And now I think that the first part of the article, if we think back, it's not, it's a good thing to kind of go back to the start, right, and build these steps up. But she talked about how genetics or the theory of evolution or what we find in are like natural things are not determined. And what she's doing is making some really interesting comparisons between the way that our genetic genetic cousins behave and then our behaviors. And so I think, I'm becoming increasingly convinced of the idea that the power struggles that we have today, we've been fighting, like these power struggles, like in this, who gets to be the alpha, is just goes all the way back in our species. Like, you can't, there was never a time when power wasn't an issue with with, you know, human beings or probably our forebears. And the societies that have this have other consequences as well, which includes trying to control females in ways that other animals don't. So
in wild chimpanzees, males also form alliances with all of the other males in their own community against males from other communities. At GOM, Goodall's team has repeatedly witnessed organized raids by males from one community against another.
It's just like, you could draw a line from that to like Rome and Carthage. Like, it's always been the same. It's always been the same.
Solitary males and mature mothers from other groups are brutally attacked and sometimes killed during these raids. These attacks by males on strange females from other communities typically involve allied males cooperating against a single female. Within the community, also, chimpanzee males sometimes gang up on females. Male bottlenose dolphins and lions also show cooperative aggression against females. Observations of these three species suggest that, when males form stable alliances with one another against other males, they will also use these alliances to try to coerce females.
So in other words, if you form a gang and you can use your gang to outpower your rival gang, you can also use it to terrorize other people. Oh, this is so depressing.
Once this occurs, female resistance to male coercion is much more difficult because the female faces several allied males rather than a single aggressor. In species in which males are larger than females, as long as the allied males outnumber the allied females, the males will have the advantage in any encounter involving force. This means that one of the primary means of female resistance to male coercion alliances with other females against males is no longer as effective.
Divide and conquer. Honestly, I can see this as a sort of mentality in the way that males, you know, group together to you know, go against females as well as other males. And like, there's like Elon Musk and Tucker Carlson rallying around Russell Brand, Andrew Tate, Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, Steve Ailes. I mean, just go down the list, right, of, well, all the predators and then all of their enablers. These guys who, like, yeah. Ugh.
It is critical to emphasize that male-male alliances against females are extremely rare among mammals, and when they do occur, as in the species mentioned above, they are rudimentary. The same males that cooperate against females typically also compete among themselves for sexual access to females, and this competition, plus cognitive limitations, constrains the ability of allied males to consolidate their power systematically against other males and, by implication, against females. During human evolution, in contrast, males developed the ability to control male-male competition within the group, presumably in order to improve their ability to compete against males from other groups.
With language and concepts and communication, right? That's, as I was saying to John, is our superpower as a species. We're smarter, or as little Dickie said, humans are smarter. That's what we do. We do smarter. And this more sophisticated ability to negotiate and form alliances probably develop sort of the idea of your word or your bond or your promise, meant they could also direct that against women in order to further control them and treat them as property. And of course, if you aren't competing over women because, you know, you're doing arranged marriages and you've got systems that reduce that competition, well, I mean, then women are staying in a subordinate position seen as property, and men are controlling the system by which that property is divided up between each of them.
This critical evolutionary step not only increased the role male coalitions played in male-male competition, but also increased male ability to control females. Many instances come to mind of males cooperating with one another against females, including abduction and rape of women from other groups during tribal raids and instances of gang rape within groups. Less obvious but equally important are cultural norms that reflect male-male cooperation to enforce sanctions that help men control female sexuality.
Again, we can see this with Tucker Carlson.
Such as the widespread legitimization of acquaintance rape and of wife beating in response to female adultery. In many instances, however, men cooperate to maintain control over women without necessarily resorting to brute force. A prime example concerns marriage systems based on exchanges of women among men residing in different groups.
Did I not
Physical
say?
coercion of women is not always required, because other, less costly means of control are often just as effective. This brings me to the third hypothesis for the evolution of patriarchy.
And that's where we're going to leave it, because I actually have an appointment at the bottom of the hour, and I need to wrap this up. Also, it seems like a nice place to leave it, because it's a lot to think about. She's just like dumped a lot of truths on us, and I think, you know, I'm kind of shocked that I haven't heard of this before or read this article before now, because there is a lot of explanation as to how certain social structures evolved. I mean, that is a question. That's like a legitimate question of like, how did we get the systems that we inherited? You go, well, we got them from our parents who, you know, made changes from the last one. Where did they get that? You know, they got from the last. You can just go back and back and back. And I think that this analysis is so good. It's so thorough, looking at various primate groups and clustering them based on these different behavior groups or behavior types of male cohesion and female cohesion within groups and the other dynamics. You also see that kind of like, you know, individuals who want to rule, and, you know, everyone wanting a say, and then having an executive that runs stuff, dimension of power there too. So I think it's a really interesting, like a Nietzschean term of a genealogy of how we came to have the crappy systems that we have. And I guess, you know, what's the most shocking thing, that going through this with y'all has really made me break it down. And of course I have to think about it a lot more than when I just read it. When I just read it, I kind of absorb it. But here I'm constantly thinking of what we've gone before. And what's really terrifying to me that I thought about today is how little the underlying systems have really changed. Feminism has been really the first attempt to deal with our daddy issues as a species when it comes to just one angle of these oppressive systems. And like, it's not destined. We have higher cognitive functions. We can choose something different. We can choose a society that isn't based, you know, like on violence or oppression. We have that choice. But I think what this does do is maybe put into context, like, the history we're coming up against, and why people think this is a default, perhaps. Yeah, because we haven't really, like, challenging the power systems has kind of gone on and off, you know. There's always been challenges to the power systems, but like having the scientific capacity, the evolution of philosophy and language, the development of the concept of human rights, all of these things get us farther and farther away from living in mud huts with, you know, sleeping with our livestock inside the same building and fearing a night raid by, you know, the local tribe over there that's going to come over and take our cattle and burn down our houses. We've come a long way from there. We don't have to live like that anymore. And yet we still do. So, all right. Well, I did see your comments. Thank you so much, Flint. We are still in the primal infancy of our civilization. I hope we can move on soon. I don't know that we're going to make it. I think we're peaking. I think this might be ATH. I think this might be the all-time high of our civilization. Hopefully not, but we will see, I guess. All right, I think that's it. Really, I think we're going to wrap it up there. I hope to have enough energy to actually do a proper one on Saturday or Sunday this week. Look, fingers crossed. But I appreciate your time and attention. I hope you learned something today. I know I did. And yeah, come back and we're going to continue on with this series. We still have a ways to go. So I'm imagining this will probably go through October at least. Probably till the end of October is what I'm thinking now. All right. Thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate that you've been here. Oh, now I got to do that thing where I get to the right page and get to the right button and then click it at the right time. I've been Kristi. You've been awesome. I hope you have a wonderful day wherever it is and whenever it is that you are. Okay.